And welcome to another episode of Nights at the Round Table. Tis your boy Man Weezy joining you from Nashville, and we got my boy Be Real out in Cali. What is good?
What's up, my man? How we feeling today?
We're chilling. We're doing a new experimentation, y'all. We're going live on Instagram, simultaneously going live on YouTube.
And on YouTube.
So if you're joining us on the gram, we want to hear from you. If you're joining us on YouTube, we want to hear from you. We literally have never done this before, so we're just kind of like shooting from the hip. And we wanted to talk about today, which I don't know if you're in the chats, let us know if you have seen the Hillsong documentary. It's actually called Hillsong, a Church Exposed. It's called Exposed?
It's called Hillsong, a Mega Church Exposed. There might be a few people here on this live who aren't familiar with Hillsong, and Hillsong has become this like global phenomenon. It's considered, I think, an evangelical church, and they have grown to they're in 30 different countries at this point. So it really is a mega church. And just recently on Discovery, somebody came out with a docu-series that was kind of going through, some of the things that the church was trying to cover up, as well as an affair that was happening with one of their main leaders, and some monies and some sexual assault charges coming through. So it's a lot. It's a lot, bro.
Yeah, it is. So I wanted to play the promo. We're gonna play it for the Instagrammers first. So here we go.
Have you ever heard of Hillsong Church?
Hillsong is the celebrity church, right?
Bieber, Bono, Vanessa Hudgens, Kevin Durant.
It wasn't just this Australian startup anymore. It was Justin Bieber's church. They've had over 3 billion views on YouTube.
Hillsong changed the way that many of us saw how church could be done.
They're huge now. They're huge.
You can make a real change if you come to Hillsong.
This was going to be a place where I could call my home. But that clearly wasn't the case, and sorry, it almost took my life.
You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time.
When we talk about Carl and purity, how could you shame me when I was so young, but you did this?
It was the most toxic thing I ever had to deal with.
Hey girl. Hi. Sooner or later, God will cut you down.
The beliefs that they put in you go deep. They really get in your head.
This is cool church.
There is a fine line between cult and culture.
They want to spread their tentacles as far as they can.
They really do believe that they need to conquer Earth in order to make heaven on Earth, to essentially bring on the end times.
This is not a moral failure. It's a felonious criminal act.
$78 million in revenue, tax-free. Manipulation, religious trauma,
Systemic cover-up.
Tremendous power.
everything in your life is Hillsong.
This is not what I thought it was.
So basically, yeah, they're accused of a lot, from mismanagement of money, from sexual misdealings. Everybody heard about what's his face?
Carl Lentz?
Carl Lentz.
Or Brian Houston.
Brian Houston. And look, y'all, to start this off, I'm not pro shitting on churches. I'm one of those people that's like, I understand that if I've never been at that caliber, I cannot effectively speak on, I can't make judgments, you know what I'm saying? Because one thing I realized is the higher you get, the more access you have to things, the more power you have, the more money you have access to a bunch of things. And with access, that just kind of illuminates all your shortcomings. It makes you really, really weak to what can happen to you. So, no, we ain't heresy hunting at all. So I don't want to talk like that. I think the conversation really needs to be about is there is there a level or is there a size in which a church should not be this big? Like, is there a point where, or are there rules? Because I was trying to look in the Bible, and it's like, it's such a different kind of, it's a different time that we're living in. B, there wasn't that, like, it talked about leadership roles, but it didn't mention like, oh, your church can't be this big or it has to be this small. It doesn't mention anything like that. So it's not even like we have a standard in that sense of the word. But I don't know. What do you like? When I saw it initially, episode 1, if y'all haven't seen it, episode 1 feels like these people were pissed and they were hurt. Like they were just mad. Like you could tell everybody was just upset because they've been hurt by this church. And so my initial thought was, this feels like a biased documentary. This feels like I'm just going to hear from one side and that's it. So that's what I felt. And then once they started putting out proof of stuff happening, like when they started showing videos of communication, then I was like, oh man, this is not a joke, and it's not people making it up. But what do you think? Like,
yeah, okay. So those are my first thoughts, because as somebody who like is still kind of somewhat connected to that world, that space, through my dad's ministry and stuff like that. A few of those people who are part of the Hillsong, I've hung out with, I've spent some time with, not a ton, but a little bit. But when it started bringing to light some of these things, right? Like one of the big things that they were talking about was essentially like unpaid labor, right? Is kind of being able to get all this free labor off of interns or people coming to the college. And as someone who has been in a leadership position and has literally had interns under me, that was one of the biggest things that I needed to do to protect my kids, was to not abuse that relationship or abuse the position that they're in, which ultimately would me being abusing my position. But when I saw what was happening, and you hear about what's happening, but then the documentary actually brings it to light, you realize this isn't just like a anomaly.
Yeah.
That really, this isn't even an attack on Hillsong. I think that structure and that organization, kind of in a lot of other places, allows for things like that, and allows for people like that to thrive on people who are under them and get away with a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things. It's like that kid got in trouble because they did a very bad thing. But the truth is there's still a lot of other people who are getting away with doing the same thing. So that was my first feel, like when I first watched it. And and it's unfortunate because that system in place almost rewards greed, right? Like a little bit of lust for power as well. And again, this isn't me bashing on him. This is kind of like saying just the overall system that's in place does that.
Yeah. Timothy Palmer says, I think the desire for power is what fuels so many of the problems in the church. Nico says, what goes in the dark will literally be brought into light. Israel says, a lot of what informs the growth of churches that people like this into leadership is greed and dishonesty. And it's kind of like what you're saying. It's really not like a specific, like, again, if you've never been in the shoes, because I always find that there's a righteous few that can comment and can judge and can say all these things. And I always laugh because I'm like, man, if you've never had that access, like you shouldn't even talk, because you don't know what you would act like if you were given everything.
Yeah.
You literally don't know. You think you got hella righteous morals until you get given money and access and fame. And all of a sudden you start feeling yourself. Like one of the interesting parts of what I saw when they would say that Lentz would preach and then get right off and jump in an SUV and disconnected from the people. It's like what you were saying, the system that we have created, this American church system, I feel fosters this rock star mentality of pastors. And I don't even it's like I can't even blame them, because I don't think anyone sets out to be that. I don't think.
Nah.
It's just that you got people around you mad hyping you, and then you're good at what you do. You have a lot of talent, and then all of a sudden you start rising up, And it's like, yeah, everything becomes justifiable. Everything does. You're killing it. So it makes sense for you to start getting paid more. And all of a sudden you're traveling and everybody wants to hear you speak. So yeah, how can we serve you, right? It's so noble. How can we serve you? What would you like? Then all of a sudden the writers get extensive and long. Then it's like, well, I need this to preach. I need this to preach. I need this to preach.
Right.
I need to fly first class. I need to, there's, then all of a sudden, and then you're like, well, I need to fly first class so I can stay in good shape. I did it. I flew first class to Australia. Granted, I paid for my own ticket, but my reasoning was so that when I get there, I'm refreshed because I can lay down in the beds. I'm not going to be all cramped, So that was my reasoning, but I paid that out of my own money. I didn't make the church pay that.
Yeah.
But you can easily see how all of these things make sense. I need to get away so that I can regroup. I need to get away. So it's really, really difficult to be like, point out where the actual problem is. When I think like what you said, it is a culture. It is truly a culture.
Because it's like, it truly is an American kind of Christianity. And again, this is not me saying that every church in America is like this, right? We're saying that there's a culture where churches kind of aim to be that because that model, that leadership style, that style of preaching has proven to be quote unquote successful, and successful in the sense of when you look at what are the values that American culture itself, right? We very much so praise people who are very good at business. It's very capitalistic, it's like, it's consumeristic and materialism and all those sorts of things. And so like when you get something like that, something that feels like it's booming or thriving, people are going to try and replicate that. And, it's one of those interesting things, like some of those writers can get so extensive, like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember hearing this story about this one preacher that he legitimately made whatever church was hosting him have to go out and buy these like special sheets, this special mattress topper, so that when he got to the hotel, the specific mattress topper needed to be there on the bed.
Damn.
And from what I understand, there wasn't any sort of like health requirement for that. Like, I got a bad back or whatever, but it was just because it was like, I can. And I will at this point.
Yeah.
And, I've been around a few of them, and some of them you're kind of like, why are we rationalizing this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you legitimately can't give me a spiritual answer for you just liking bougie things.
Yeah.
And there's no problem with bougie things. And this is also the other thing, which a lot of people have an issue with the Hillsong doc, is because when it comes to money being made off of the church, right?
Right.
So in this case, Hillsong is making a ton of money in this, right? They're even charging churches like a 3 or 4% fund to be a part of like the Hillsong family, which kind of allows you, it's almost like a church club, which is kind of, it feels weird, right? So Mikey, I need my topper. Oh man. And so with that, it's like you got these people who are making like a ton of money, but then you got kids who are struggling, showing up to your school, working beyond the point of exhaustion. And so it's like one of those things of like,
that's tough, like, man. That is tough.
This feels lopsided.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and it feels unfair and a little bit unjust in some ways. So the documentary goes into that. They interview a ton of people who were a part of it, and we're just like, all those sorts of things. I love the thread right now. It's talking about the toppers.
Which is, if it ain't Gucci topper, don't invite me to speak at your church. Yo, but for real, right? Like, I've seen some, look, I've been a part of it. My rider was simple. When I was touring, it was very simple. Like, it was just like, yo, I just want some healthy food. Just give me a healthy option. One, fish or chicken, like that was it. That's literally my only bougiest request. And that you had to fly me Delta. And I only did that because when I spent the first 4 years just letting promoters and pastors pick my flights, they were putting me on the most ghetto airlines with multiple stops to where
was it
I got to wake up at 5 a.m. to catch a flight to stop in Denver, then to stop in Oklahoma just to get to Florida. And I would look at the difference in prices, and it was like to save $200. And it started making me feel a certain type of way, because then when I got there hella tired, it would be like, we're so happy to have you here. And I'd be like, no, you're not. You literally put me on a horrendous flight to save $200. Like, I don't feel appreciated. So again, these things, there's somewhat of a rationale, but if you're too big that you don't even know what's going on at the bottom of your people, then we may say that you've gotten too big.
Yeah.
Because if you're balling and your kids are not eating, that's like, I don't even know how do you feel about that? Like how?
Yeah.
I just don't know.
It's one of those things, right? Like Jesus says, who will be the greatest among you, right? What does he say?
The least of these.
Whoever is the greatest among you, they're going to be the ones that serve, right? So it's kind of one of those things. And then it goes back to, what does it mean to be like a good pastor? And there's a difference, right? Like, and again, not saying he was not a good pastor. In some ways, yes, some ways, probably not. But when I think about what a pastor means, like in my life, like it means that someone who's close enough to me to understand what is going on in my life, the struggles, the victories, the sorrows, the doubts, the praise report, all those sorts of things, and can help like legitimately walk me through life, like someone who's there hand in hand with. Now, when you start getting to these huge, huge churches and there's pastors who don't even know your name, that feels just a little weird for me, just a little bit. And I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's weird. And I'm just saying, how much can someone really walk with you if they don't know you? Right. Like, it just does not happen. So yeah,
I have
one of those things.
Nina says, I was an intern for 4 years at Church of the Harvest / Youth America in OKC, and they are shut down now for all the stuff that you guys are talking about. That's sad.
Yeah.
There's a liberty in Jesus. There's a line though, right? At some point it's just like, nah, that's too much. And then Rachel asked, did y'all talk about Mike Todd's Easter service?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't even know what happened at the Easter service.
Is there
I do know that Carl's a part of the.
Is there
a part
Rachel?
Of this church now.
Rachel, if you're still on, is there something that happened at the Easter service? Like I'm like Googling and I'm like, Transformations Church's demonic Easter Sunday service. What in the world? What was demonic about it, Rachel? Let us know.
Google it. Okay, I'm really curious to see.
Google it. She wants me to Google it. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna put it up right now, and y'all gonna hear it. Let's see what this is, because now I'm super.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. I know that I'm a little bit late on this one, but I need to address it mainly because I am quite angered by it.
Oh, you are, sir.
Rather offended by it, and I think that everyone should know about what actually went on. Now, Easter was last weekend, and if you are a Christian, it should be a very, very important time of remembrance and looking at what Christ did for not just us, but really the entire world. It's about the death, burial, and resurrection.
Get to it, sir. I'm gonna need to. What happened?
I was about to say, man, his voice is so unexciting.
Oh, okay, hold on. Let's see.
I just zoned out.
Here it goes.
Of what went on and why people are so outraged because of it.
You were saying, Dragon, this is what you need to do. Step 1, find you a fatty. Okay. But step 2, he gotta have a fatty. Hey.
That's funny.
Uh-oh. What is she doing? Friends, I don't have a fatty. Girl, we keep telling you it's okay. Your little booty matter too, friend. Y'all know they don't be discriminating.
I haven't seen anything demonic yet.
Nah, it looks like a Coachella set right now, honestly.
I would have been so turned with them.
Yeah. So
well, I don't understand what's so
Rachel's
bad.
Saying, so it legitimately looked like a concert. And I think people were probably, because like Easter is, a very sacred holiday for Christians. And so I think they probably wanted like a more traditional service. And they were talking about backside. There's just one, there's some stuff. So I wonder if his take on it was like trying to modernize it. I did see like a picture of a black Jesus on the cross, which is kind of dope. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was him on the cross. That'd be kind of weird. Or if it was just like another black dude at the church acting as Jesus. But yeah, I mean,
interesting. Somebody says they were talking about her backside and how she doesn't have one, and there was just some stuff.
Oh, gotcha.
That's funny. I think that's funny. Joanna saying that Michael said we're going to go to the edge on this, and they said, Pastor, how far on the edge are we going to go? And I said, we're going to do everything short of sin. Todd continued, we're going to reach over and grab the people who thought they were nothing, that God hated them, that God won't forgive them. We're going to snatch them back.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they're, to win them all, you got to become all. But yeah, no, it's interesting because like for that, I'm kind of like, hey, that's fun. That's different. I'm always down for new innovative ways to restructure what a Sunday morning experience looks like for people. And for Easter, it's one of those things that's like, it's a gamble, right? Like you're going a completely different direction to try and win people and I guess attract to different people. And if part of their goal was to get people talking about it, I guess, now again, I'm not saying that the means justify the ends because I don't know if the means here were necessarily inherently evil or bad, right? Playing a secular song at a church doesn't necessarily constitute for me crossing a line or even twerking at church necessarily, right? Like, I don't know. And I could probably be on a very much so outskirt about that.
Well, here's the thing, y'all. Liberty and Jesus is saying so to justify the means, and we're talking about it, but I think, look, y'all, for most of y'all, if you grew up in the church, let's be honest, because I think what we do is we give the world a lot of power, right?
Oh, too much.
And I think they get all the power because the world is not afraid to be creative. There are no boundaries for the world to create, right? So they create some dope-ish. And then what the church does, and I saw this in the music industry so much, we just regurgitate what they're doing. Like my group was the Christian Black Eyed Peas, and then you had the Christian this and the Christian that. And the reason the world is so ahead of us in creativity is because we stifle ourselves. We actually say, oh, this should look like this. How many of y'all, look, chat, Instagram Live, everybody here on YouTube, how many of y'all, when you went to church and they said, let's dance like David danced, all you saw was people jumping? They just jumped. They were just like.
And you get your little two-step.
You just
clap on rhythm.
Literally everybody who jumped was considered dancing. And that wasn't dancing, that was jumping. And I was so confused coming fresh off the streets. I'm like, if we're dancing like Jesus, dancing or like it said, David danced. I'm like curious, how did David look when he was dancing? What was dancing back then? You know what I'm saying? Because it sure as hell wasn't jumping up and down. That's called calisthenics. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, let me share an experience, right? One of the only times I felt free enough in my life to dance like what I would imagine David felt like, right? Like, I don't think it was less about the moves he was doing and the manner he was doing it. And it was more about the spirit in which he felt, right? Like he felt completely free. Like there was no thought, whatever.
And he danced naked. What? He danced naked.
Crazy, right? Like that's far more offensive than twerking.
Come on.
Yeah, that's far more offensive than throwing that ass in a circle. Anyways, 2016, right? This is the St. Pablo tour. Kanye West is on tour with one of his greatest albums of all time, The Life of Pablo. And the first time that I went to the concert, Maddie and I went, I don't even think we were married yet. And what's crazy is we sat kind of just like in the general seating lower area. and the stage is floating, and it's just like out of this world, like just insane. And so me and my boy Jordan, who I don't know if he's still on here, he was there.
Stevie said he was there.
Yeah, that's right. You were there with him. Anyways, we ended up going later on in October when he came back through San Jose. And this was the concert right before he went to Sacramento, ended up talking for like an hour and a half, performed 4 songs. Everyone's sad. Sorry, Sacramento, right? And we're in the general admission. So we're underneath the stage and songs were going and literally was just like dancing and jumping. And there was no sense of like, I wonder if I look stupid right now. Like
right.
there was no thought of like, I wonder how people are going to perceive me right now. Am I crazy?
Right.
Am I jumping too high? Am I screaming too loud? I've never felt like that ever, really, in a church setting. I felt like that in some prayer groups and all that sorts of stuff, smaller settings, but not like that. And I thought that was interesting that I felt that first at a secular conference.
Sure.
And yeah, dude, it was like one of the freest moments I've ever felt to dance and sing.
Well, I believe that
always
too.
Stuck with me.
Well, because look, if you're operating in your greatness and you have nothing holding you back, like your true talents, everything that you feel, like what you hear, what you see and hear, you're like, if I can execute this, this is going to be some heavenly-ish.
Yeah.
But yet every Christian creator, when they see something up here, the first thing that they have to put it against is, what are people going to say?
Yeah, for sure.
What are people going to say? And then it just shuts the creativity down right then and there.
Yeah. And it's one of those things of like, okay, I'm going to be a little bit free, but not really, right? Like, I don't want to sing too loud. I don't want to sing off key. I don't want to take away shine from what's going on up there on the stage. And like, I just can't imagine that that's what the heart posture was or the freedom in which David felt when he was dancing before the Lord.
I think he was dancing exactly how they were dancing in that culture. I think he was getting down, he was naked, and he was free. And
yeah.
I feel like if we had a David now, I don't think that dude would be allowed in church. I think he'd be like considered crazy. Like, imagine dancing naked, seeing somebody. Like, I don't know, man. And especially a dude dancing. It's like, bro, things gonna be jangling. You know what I'm saying? So I think the real question is, which chat, I want to hear from you too. Should there be a cap, or should there be like a money cap when it comes to pastoral leadership? Because I've always been the kind of guy that's like, yo, if you can come up with a way to make money outside of church and you ball out, I'm gonna clap you up and I'm gonna ask advice. How'd you do it?
Yeah, go get that bread.
Get it. You know what I'm saying? So you can wear the Gucci's and you can do whatever you want, because I've always known it's like, you don't know what their giving looks like. You don't know how much they're giving away. Do your thing. And the reason I say that is because I've always been accused of buying too much, or like when I bought my Louis luggage, they sat in their boxes for the first 6 months.
That's wild.
I was so afraid. My wife was like, people are going to think that you're just bougie and you're this and that. And nobody knows that I'm buying cars for people, that I just bought the church a new 12 passenger van, that we just built, we just paid and built for a brand new building in the Philippines for sex trafficking victims. Nobody knew that we were doing all of that stuff, but they knew that I had Louis and Gucci on, and they had a problem with it. Garcia, the movie we're talking about is Hillsong documentary.
It's called A Mega
Church Exposed.
Mega Church Exposed.
Nico says there needs to be better boundaries. But what are those boundaries, Nico? That's what I'm saying. Oh my God, yes, people always say we are living crazy times. Now I think those days are crazy. Louis luggage, nah, you're him, Steve. Church should be a judgment-free zone. That is wishful thinking, Jessica, but I believe you.
So, but this is okay. Can I share something real quick? So sometimes there's a part of me that low-key feels like this is like a little bit of a scam, just a little bit, right? So it's like, you see there's a group of particular pastors, preachers who are all kind of together, like in a little crew.
Right.
And all of them have their own people. They got their own churches that they have. And these churches host their own conferences. And who do they bring to these conferences, right? They bring their homeboys.
Right.
So their homeboy happened to just write a book. Now, granted, based off of like selling a book is hard to begin with, right? Unless you are a very notable author, or unless your work is absolutely fire, there is a very good chance you are not selling a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to have a conference that I conveniently can bring my new book to, and everyone there is going to be like, dude, I am so hungry. Like, I got to get this book. Like, I'm going to, they buy it. They go back, they go to their next homeboys conference. They sell their book there. And these conferences are attracting a lot of people, right? And so it's one of those weird things. Like, again, I can never search the heart of a man, right? And we can never really talk about intention because I don't know them like that, right? But it also feels weird because if it wasn't for these churches, there wouldn't necessarily be the clientele to really be buying those books, right? So book sales is also one of those weird things because, it's kind of like go to your homeboys conference, sell your merch, sell your book or whatever, and then you're on to the next place next weekend, So that situation's kind of weird because it feels like kind of a good boys club at times.
Sure. But I mean, is that bad? I don't know if that's
necessarily bad.
I mean, and again, if it's like a book that you wrote and it's good, like I'm cool with that. I really am cool with that. Like I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, because if I had a church and I knew my homeboy, if I had a church and you're a preacher, I would 100% be like, B, come to my church and preach because I think you're good. So I want people to hear you. So I don't know if I'd be like, I think I would do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Nico says, true, merch and book sales shouldn't be capped, but maybe pastor salary. I think a pastor, a board, typically there's a board on a church. So they're the ones that determine the pastor's salary, and they have to be able to look at what the church is bringing in to determine what a pastor should make, typically. So should there be a cap? I don't know. If you believe in the pastor and what they're doing, is that an okay thing? Because, at some point, he has to live good. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Diana says, I think this kind of exposure is important, especially their business tactics. Some people believe that when churches demonstrate economic success, it is equivalent to being on God's righteous path. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's American way of thinking, right? If the numbers say it, then that means God is blessing me. And I used to think that too. If we sold records, if we did enough shows, oh man, the Lord is with us. If we weren't doing shows, if we weren't selling records, the Lord is turned against us.
Yeah, there's something wrong.
There's something wrong. Yeah. No favor. And it was purely based on numbers. Which, how do you get out of that if you're living in an American church system?
Right. So it's not measured in the amount of dollars coming in or measured in the amount of people that's filling the seats, right? It's measured in the people whose lives are being transformed and the community around you actually being changed for the better, right? Like having an actual positive impact. We had a pastor on, was a couple weeks ago, and I loved his answer, right? We asked him, like, you asked him, he said, hey, what does it mean to be a Christian? And he had like one of the most poignant responses that I've heard in a while.
Yeah.
And he said this, he said, go ask my neighbor. And that was it, like just it, right? Because like if your neighbor cannot see the love of Jesus and feel what this kingdom is all about through your life, what's the point? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Mikey brought up something earlier. He said, hey, I bet Jesus was like strapped up in that Gucci of his day, which, what's crazy is
he also said Jesus got laced up by rich folk. No, I might've made that up. No, you're correct.
No, that's correct.
He did have a rich woman following him, taking care of bills. Like he did have people supporting him. But he also had a treasurer. Yeah. Which we know is the Judas. he had somebody taking care of it. I don't know if we see in scripture God ever worrying about money. He doesn't really, we don't ever really see that dialogue between him and his disciples where he's actually concerned with if he's going to be okay or not. But he did have people taking care of him. But again, don't muzzle the ox while it's treading, right? So I'm not saying don't take care of pastors or preachers, and I'm not saying churches shouldn't make money. Here's my one point about money in churches. If you have $1 million sound system, but you do not have a food bank, I gotta talk to you.
We gotta sit down,
because I've been in a lot of churches that have millions of dollars sound system and a place to hold a bunch of people and no food bank. And the tithe was literally, if y'all research the tithe in the Old Testament, it was literally for food. So when in Micah, where it says, bring the food into the storehouse so that my people, like, it was literally bring the priest food so that the priest can eat and so that they can feed the poor. That's what the tithe was for. I had a conversation with a friend that I was writing with yesterday. And this was crazy to me because I got so hyped. I ruined the writing session. Good thing we were done with the song. But I got so hyped because he was telling me how he was in debt to the government and he was afraid of a lien getting put on his house. But he felt called to make a big donation to the church. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait, you're tithing consistently. A lot of money's going out because the typical American way of thinking is tithe so that you can be blessed. Give so that God can give you back 100-fold. It's really like a prosperity gospel. And I was telling him, yo, if you haven't paid off your debt, what are you doing tithing? I genuinely was like, tithing, the whole point of giving is to understand that money cannot be your God. That was the purpose of forcing a tithe. Will you pick money over God? When you can get past that hurdle that every believer has to get past, every single person has to get past this idea that they cannot serve God and money at the same time. Once you can get past that and create inside of yourself a generous heart, then you can strategize ways to get out of the predicament that you're in. So for him, I was like, bro, I'm not saying don't be a giver. I'm saying that you are literally operating out of lack, expecting Jesus to give you a certain amount of money so that you can take care of your bad decisions. When I'm like, you're making the money now, take care of the bad decisions now, and then start operating out of giving from a place of overflow. Yeah. Because if you go Old Testament, if you want to go Old Testament with the idea of tithing, then go Old Testament with the idea of being in debt. Because in the Old Testament, it literally accounts death. If you had debt, you are under a curse. It literally says you are under a curse if you are in debt to anyone. So I'm like, if you're going to follow the Old Testament law of tithing, then you got to follow the Old Testament law of debt. And think about this in a very simple way, y'all. If tithing was about giving food and grain, which is basically animals and grain, who in the biblical times or even in the ancient world had grains and animals? Rich people. Poor people didn't own grain and didn't own land. They didn't own animals. They tended land. They tended the animals. But it was a select few that actually could even afford to tithe. The way the Old Testament law says it, which is with grain and food. So there was a certain group of people that had the mandate to do that type of tithing. Because how could you tithe wheat and animals that weren't yours? So there's a lot of people left out of that law. And so in my mind, I'm like, pay your debt, then be generous with your giving. if you are at a generous place in your heart, if you are someone who serves God, money, then you got way bigger problems than, because at that point, I don't even know I think you need to address that before you address anything else, because giving with an uncheerful heart, I don't even know God wants to rock with that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the church will take the money, but I don't know. That's just my thought on Old Testament tithing and giving. You could probably have a different thought. Chat, let me know what you think. What do you think, B?
Dude, no, you said it. What's crazy too is when you think about that today, like there are systems and structures in place to keep you in debt.
Yep.
Right? And according to the Old Testament, right, being in debt like that to another person is you are under a curse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you think about that. And it's crazy because that's the way that this financial system works and thrives. And so, and what you're saying though was so key, because if it's like, you know, people used to, I remember talking with somebody, I was talking with one of my students, and I was saying, their problem was like 10% is just way too much, right? We didn't get into the minutia of like, listen, I just broke it down like this. It's like, you're concerned with giving 10%. The bigger issues, this is all God to begin with, right? He's the one who gives you the power to create wealth. So if you got a problem of giving just a little bit, right? This is less about the amount that you're giving and the percentage you're giving. And this is more about the reflection of where your heart is truly at and who you serve, right? And Jesus clearly said, hey, that you cannot serve both gods. It is either me or this, right? And so it is tough as an American Christian, right? You're going to want these nice things. You're going to want to buy the house, all those sorts of things. But at the same time too, it's like, how do I get to a place where I'm not serving money? And money doesn't have a hold over me, even though like the grind, the hustle, all that sort of stuff is celebrated on a major pedestal.
Well, I think the only way to really find out if money is got a hold of y'all, which let me read some comments. Garcia said, what do you think of churches building multiple homes under the church's name so they don't pay taxes? If they're using the homes to house people, you know, awesome. Yeah. If they're providing affordable housing for people, amazing. You know, that's what I think about that, Garcia. Also, Nina says, also the tithe doesn't have to be to your church. It never says it does in the Bible. It says, bring it to the storehouse that there may be food in my house. So Nina, literally the tithe, again, it was supposed to be for the priesthood so that they can take care of themselves and so that they can take care of the poor. It was literally for the poor. It was buy food so that the people who are taking care of the house of God can eat, and so that poor people had a place to come and eat. And so I think the bigger issue is this idea that the law of tithing, which chat, let me know, how many of you guys are afraid that if you don't tithe, and this has nothing to do with the posture of your heart, there's just a fear in you that if you don't tithe, that somehow God will not bless you. Has anybody ever thought that way?
Oh, yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Chat, let us know if you ever thought that way. If you ever thought that if you stopped tithing, or if you didn't give to this church or whatever, or if you took care of your own needs first, right? Because you were in debt, because you're living check to check, and you don't have a savings. This is the thing that was killing me of my boy that I was riding with. I'm like, bruh, you're telling me that you gave this amount to the church, and now you're afraid that there's going to be a lien put on your house. Don't you think wisdom says, take that money and take care of what you need to do for your family first? Yeah. Because let me ask you something, and this is for everybody in the chat. If you ever fell in a bad place, how many of you feel confident that you can go back to your church and say, hey, I gave you 40 grand this year in tithe. I'm going to need 25 of it back.
Listen.
Because I got bills to pay. Do you think, somebody tell me this, do you think that your church will have a $25,000 check because you need to pay off your debt? Or will they say the money's gone?
Hey, it's the Lord's. It's gone.
Like somebody tell me, because I asked them, I was like, do you think that if they knew that you were in a lien, that they give you your tithe money back?
Whoa.
And he's like, I don't think so. And I'm like,
uh-oh.
Because the New Testament church did what? The Acts church did what? They all lived together and they all shared in each other's burdens.
According to the needs.
According to the needs. So that's a different way of looking at things. There wasn't a centralized thing. It was like, let's be communal. And at some point, the Smiths are going to need something. Let's help each other out. At some point, the Reyeses are going to need something. Okay, you gave me. Now it's my turn to give you. And we're just going to trade around this wealth and we're going to help each other out. But that's not the structure that's built. It's give sacrificially. And the more, these are the words coming out of his mouth. And I'm like, bruh, this is a capitalistic move to make you feel bad for not giving when giving was never the point. If God wanted to get a billionaire that hated Jesus, he could write a check to take care of every single church in California. If he really wanted to, God can be like, I'm going to put it on this billionaire's heart. The billionaire is going to write a check for $100 million and it's going to take care of all the churches. And he don't even believe in God. So he doesn't need our money. It's truly about where your heart is at concerning money. So if you are still in debt, but you giving massive checks to the church, all I'm going to say is, yo, pay off your debt, bruh. Pay off your debt. Let me see. Who else is saying something? I've been blessed infinitely more using my tithe to partner with causes around me that God leads me to give than ever. Yep. That's
Absolutely.
what we do. We do now. We have a giving account and we give as the Lord leads.
Yep.
Rachel says we will pray for you. I don't know if she means we will pray for me.
She means for you, Manny.
Oh, she's gonna be praying for me?
No, I'm
Thanks,
kidding.
Rachel. Liberty and Jesus says, that ain't a thing. I don't know what she's talking about. I understand what y'all saying, but I give because I want to have a cheerful heart. Tiff says. Cool. Tiff, we're not saying giving is bad.
Yeah.
I'm saying giving out of a place where your house is about to get repoed because you haven't paid your taxes. Pay your taxes before you go giving away your money to church. Okay, yep. As the Spirit leads. Okay, cool. Caught up with everybody. That's all I'm saying. If you have to, he needs to sacrificially give to his debt. Yes. Yes. Like,
well put.
Like what good do you do by losing your house because you know, and a lot of it I feel is like manipulation. I don't know about y'all, but listen, y'all, if the power of the tithe and you not giving it will then create a curse in your life or Jesus not to bless you, then are we saying that the tithe and money is stronger than the grace of God and the cross? Do I need to be afraid of money like that? To where if I feel like, Jesus, I don't have enough to go per month. Granted, I may have made some bad financial decisions and that's on me. I take that. But I could really use my tithe to like buy food.
Yeah.
To like pay off this debt. Like if I use my tithe, I would be out of debt in a year. I don't think the Lord's up there like, oh, that's a bad heart. You got an ugly heart. You trying to get out of debt and you won't want to give to First Baptist so-and-so. Like, I just don't see a place where that would be true. But I don't know. I could be off. Somebody tell me if I'm off. Please. Please. Because
God said, no, you got an ugly heart. I don't mess with that.
You know, I don't know, man. Somebody tell me, because this is serious for me. I feel there's too many people. If tithing was supposed to bring riches, then why do we have more poor people in church than rich people? If everybody who tithes is supposed to get 100-fold back.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate because most church models, the way that they survive is off the tithe money, right? So it's like it pays the salaries, it pays the building, but doesn't necessarily help the community in ways. And I'm not saying all churches. Now, there's some churches that have like a completely different model. And I remember when the first times I saw this and I thought it was like the dopest thing. We were on a ministry trip in Hong Kong and there's this pastor there and I forgot the name of the house actually, but all the pastors who were on staff and their wives were all business people. And so they all made their money with all the business and stuff. And so when the church came together, all the tithe money, literally, they didn't see a single cent of it because they're like, we're good. Our families are taken care of. And all that money got to be used for was outreach. So it attracted a lot of business people. And it was such a dope thing because it's like you got all these people who kind of they got money, they're wealthy.
Yeah.
We're coming together. And now that money isn't coming to them. Their money is literally just going out. And I thought, man, this is like such a dope model where pastors aren't relying and hoping that the people in the pews are going to tithe this week. And people in the pews aren't hoping that their needs are going to get met by the community that they're a part of. So
that sounds like brilliance.
Yeah, it was so dope, man. And that church was like, yeah, it was so fresh. Like I was like, yo, I love this model because, you know, as much as I want, you know, pastors to be free from the burden of tithing, right? Pastors feel it too.
It's
right?
tough. Yeah.
It's all the time, right? Like I was on staff for a couple churches. One of the churches was far more focused on tithing. And I just remember the conversations in back rooms and talking about how much tithe was down and how much they needed to reach out to so-and-so to give the check that they normally give. And I just thought, yo, this is crazy. Like there isn't any like strategizing or scheming in here to try and be like, hey, what are some ways that we could partner with people who are doing the work here in this community and help them?
Yeah.
Like, who are the marginalized? Who are the oppressed? Who are the people who are down and out around us that God has like placed us here in this area to help? How can we help them? Right.
Yeah.
It was like, oh yeah, our tithe money's down. So we're actually gonna have to cut back on a project that was just like, you know, whatever. So
yeah, Liberty and Jesus says yes, that's what Goshen is about. We need to create Goshen in this season. Oh, that's
I have no idea
I have never heard of Goshen. So tell us, Liberty and Jesus, what this is. Same with volunteering. All the time you volunteer without a real spiritual deposit back into them. Diana says that. Mikey says those back rooms made me want to go out the front door.
Yo, so I know Goshen is in the Bible, but and it's also a city in California. But in the context of what she's talking about, I don't know, and I'm assuming it's probably some, you know, some I don't know. Prophetic word of what's happening right now or something.
You know, one thing that someone brought to my attention that was like, I got DM'd and somebody said, oh, that Lentz was at Mike Todd's church. Like he got hired over there.
Yeah.
And this is a controversial topic because, look, guys, I land more on grace than anything else. So I'm probably the worst if you're looking for doom and gloom. I'm a grace dude. So my question to y'all and to you, B, do we feel that there's no time in the Bible, like as far as sitting someone down, there's no like way of doing this thing, how long they should be out, should they come back? Like I haven't read anything. I am so open for someone to tell me like, or tell me a scripture passage where it says, if somebody messes up, then they're done. Because I saw consequences handed out to leaders. It feels like Saul, like he just got to mess up a lot. And he, you know, it wasn't till the very end that fool lost his kingship, you know. David, you know, he did his thing, messed up, you know what I'm saying? Like God had so much grace after like so many mistakes. So I don't see the pattern or the spirit of if somebody in leadership falls, that we hold them to the fire for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, usually 2 years is like this like mythical number they pick for like full restoration, right? And they use all that language. And yeah, it's one of those things like, listen, like he had several affairs. You know what I'm saying? Like the girl that came out, it just wasn't it. And it happened over the course of years. It wasn't just this like during like post-little COVID era. Like it's before. And I remember hearing stories about this, right? And so I think whether they decided to bring him on board or not is not really the question I'm concerned with, right? Like, I think the question I'm concerned with is like, hopefully this dude is taking care of his family legitimately. Like, hopefully he's doing all the right things to earn the trust back of his kids, his wife, right? Like, I feel bad. And I hope in the areas that, I mean, the guy is stupid charismatic. I've hung out with him and was like, yo, this has got to be the coolest dude I've ever met. Like legitimately, like just has that aura about him. But obviously for someone to go to those depths, like it meant that there were probably some things that were really going wrong inside. And so I hope for his sake, his family's sake, that like over the course of when he like got let go and he's doing all sorts of stuff and then coming back to this place and getting hired on, I hope those areas that were needing healing in his heart and soul were healed, right? That's like, I as much as he messed up, I want that dude to win, right? Like, I'm like, yo, you
but most people
as well, right?
Most people don't. Like, look,
most people do not.
Most like, people want them to freaking suffer. You know, like, okay, so like Nina says this, I feel like it should depend on them acknowledging the harm that they have caused, not making excuses, and then what they are doing to repair the damage, if that is even possible.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So when you say something like, I hope he's doing this, or I hope he's doing that, right? I feel like that is a position where I think because of how jaded most of us are with church, our initial thought maybe is not, they're good. I trust that Pastor Todd, gave him a good interview and checked his whatever. And I give them the benefit of the doubt. Good for him. Like, you don't really see that because I think people are so jaded with church and failure of church that it's like, oh, we need to impress upon them some kind of discipline, some kind of action.
Some sort of punishment.
But I'm just like, where in the gospel does it show how much you should like beat a dude while he's down or a girl? Like, I just don't see it. And I don't think I would want it if I was in his position. I would want more people like, bro, we can't wait to see you back. We want you to get healed. Can't wait to see you back. Can't wait to see you back. You don't hear that. It's more like, oh, why is he back? Is he back too soon? Did he really mean it? Did he really get healing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's unfortunate because a lot of that, like the Christianity that we see is like, it's celebrity culture, right? And in the way that we love to see celebrities fail and fall. It's the same thing that translates over to our church, right? We get this fascination with particular leaders who are charismatic and gifted and can communicate their ass off. And then as soon as we hear of like what's going bad in their life, we're like, yes, I knew it. I always knew it. I had a weird feeling about that guy.
Too good to be true.
I discerned it. And to me, that's weird because that's not love, right? Love does not rejoice in that way.
But Nina says, I have seen way too many wolves let back in the sheep pen. There are more worried about courting wolves than protecting sheep. And I understand your perspective, Nina. I understand your position. But is that the godly position to have? Because it sounds like that's a position of your personal experience. But if you were that person, how would you want to be treated? And that's all I'm saying. If any of us were Carl, how would we want to be treated? Would we want more grace than judgment? Would we want the benefit of the doubt more than he probably didn't mean it? And that's kind of where I always land. It's like, guys, we are all one decision away from the dumbest shit of our life. TD Jake said this once. He's like, I'm one decision away of losing my marriage.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. And he said that from the pulpit. And he's like, one decision. I can make one bad decision and I'm done. One decision, not two, not three, not four. I am one decision away from losing my marriage, from losing my church. And when he said that, because he was saying like, yo, we need grace for one another. Yeah. Because this thing is hard. This walk, this trying to be holy, this trying to be more godlike. Every one of us are one decision away from losing everything. So knowing that, I think the beneficial thing to see the church rise, to see it continue to flourish is, man, give the benefit of the doubt. Truly treat people how you would want to be treated. Truly, man, hope for the best, not hope that the worst isn't going to come. And I know that's a lot to ask. I know it's a lot to ask because a lot of people have had negative experiences with church culture. So I know it's a lot to ask. All I'm saying is, are you willing to at least consider putting yourself in the shoes of someone who has hurt you or the church who has hurt you and be like, if I were them, how would I want to be treated? I don't know. That's just how I see it. And I could be totally off because by the end of the documentary, the fact that Brian Houston stepped down, the fact that the evidence was crazy overwhelming, the fact that he still has to go to court, I'm like, I was literally the whole time like, oh, please let it not be true. Please let it not be true. Benefit of the doubt. But then when he had to step down himself and then they have all this evidence, I'm like, oh, man. And I didn't think any less of him. I wasn't like, oh, what a bad dude. I was just like, man, how hard it must be to succeed to get that big. How hard. Jesus, thank you for my little bubble of success that keeps me out of the public eye.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough.
I don't know. That's me.
Yeah. And then Nina also said, feel like I would show my character by taking myself out of the limelight for a while, if not forever, and just taking a more humble service position. I get what you're saying, but he's also like he's one of the best communicators. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that dude was legitimately born to preach, right? So it's like to take away because, right, mistake. So again, believing that there has been change, that there has been healing, that there has been restoration, all those sorts of things. Now, as that's happening, as it's happened, right? Because it's two sides of the coin, is let that man go and do what he's born to do. Straight up, right? Like, like that's like, to me, it doesn't matter about a position out of the limelight or not. That's like, that man was legitimately born to do that. So,
and here's why, Nina, I'm not coming against you, Nina, but when you say I will take myself out of the limelight, not forever, just take a more humble service position. My question is, you're self-sentencing yourself. It's like, does God actually want you to forever take yourself out? You know what I'm saying? Like, who decides the calling that you have? If it's you, then you're literally sidelining yourself when the Lord in grace is like, get back in the game. You're going to be smarter for this. You're going to put little protection around you because now you've fallen and now you know that it can happen to you.
Yeah.
But why sideline yourself when the Lord isn't? I just don't know the Lord. I don't know the Lord to be. I don't know. I've never seen him sideline anybody forever. And then Breezy says leaders are judged to a different standard. And I've heard this before. They have responsibility. But what is that standard? That's what I've been taught at church, especially holding leadership positions. I've heard that too, Breezy. But what is that standard? Because I haven't seen it in the Bible. I haven't seen a specific time or somebody gets stripped away and there's no grace for them. There's no other side for them.
Yeah.
So
that's sorry to cut you off, but that's like, when you think about that, I'll just say bigger scale. That's what salvation is, right? It's a comeback story, right? I love how Mikey said, because if he gets back, it's really going to be God who redeemed it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Like the fact that we're going to get in, right? Like the fact that in the end of the day, love wins. That's the greatest comeback story of all time. That's what salvation is constantly trying to do. That's why the Spirit is at work everywhere around you. It's constantly trying to redeem. It's constantly trying to bring people who are down back up.
Well, think about this story, exactly what you're saying. Guys, think about this in a real way. Say Carl, whatever, we shame him and he never comes back and preaches and he just slithers away and we never hear from him again. Oh yeah, that's righteousness or that's whatever, right? All that does is reinforce in our own lives that if you fuck up, you're done.
Yeah.
But imagine him getting a chance to do it right, getting a second chance, and then God blesses him. What does that mean for you? That means you can get bigger than you ever thought you would, do the dumbest shit that you ever thought you wouldn't do, And God still has grace enough for you to say, I'm not done with you. That's what that story communicates. Yeah. I remember when I saw Kurt Franklin on Oprah. And when he was talking about, I don't know if you ever saw this, but he was talking about his addiction to porn. And he was like, one night I knew it was so bad. This is when I knew it was bad, is that one night I felt like God convicted me, and I threw away all my magazines in the trash can, went back home, went to sleep. He's like, at 3 or 4 in the morning, I was so riddled that I went back to the trash can, jumped in the trash dumpster, got all my stuff out. That's when I knew I had a problem. Mind you, this is Kirk, and I've done a bunch of shows with Kirk, you know, met him. Like, I thought he was the best. When he admitted that, I was like, wow, God. I didn't think a single negative thing about Kirk. The first thing that came to my head was, and you still blessed him. You were still gracious to him. You still allowed him to share a stage and to do what he was made to do while he was trying to fight for his soul. Like, you didn't shun him. You didn't shame him. And it literally gave me hope that God isn't this freaking monster just waiting for you to mess up so that he can push you down so that you will never get back up. So it was like, it was crazy for me.
Yeah.
Nina says Hitler was a really great communicator, not equating the two, just saying. That means you're equating the two. I'm going to put the people I have hurt and their healing in priority and then get back to me.
I wrote a comment. I said, it's tough to say whether he's made those amends or not, right?
Yeah. Everyone in the Bible was jacked up, and God still promotes. It makes no human sense of
Diana,
what God does.
How do you feel about Carl shunning? I'm going to assume it's shunning the young couple in the dock for having premarital sex. Well, that's one of those where his like, gotcha, right? Like, he's pointing the finger at the same time, you know, he's getting it in on the side with the babysitter, but hey.
I don't feel any type of way. I mean, I hate that he made the people feel that way.
Yeah, it sucks for the couple, for sure.
For the couple. For him, he was doing something worse to himself.
Right.
He was,
right? So
he was setting himself up like really bad. Like, it would have been way better to just be like, yo, I struggle with it. So he did more to himself. It sucks that the couple had to live under that because, you know, they submitted to this guy's leadership. So I don't like that he did that to them, but he was just sowing seeds that will eventually come back and bite himself in the ass, you know, because it just makes it worse. If he was a preacher that was like, because that's in the documentary, it kept saying that one of the main messages was purity, purity, purity. It's what he always drove. And typically we all know when you harp on something that much, it's because you can't get your mind off of it because you are fucking struggling with that thing.
Yeah.
Anytime you zero in on something so hard, it's because it is not leading your thoughts.
Okay, so this is a little bit of tea, right? I'm not going to mention names, but there's a very well-known worship leader, right, who openly condemns homosexuality, right? And it's so much so of like their goal is to, convert all young men to just heterosexual males, right? And behind closed doors, that's a struggle, right? So it's like, it's interesting that in the same way that he was preaching purity, it was because that was a struggle of his. Yeah. And that was something he didn't have victory with behind closed doors. What's up, Adam Barta? Dude, my boy, Adam Barta. He was the first one. He just joined. Random story. Dude, the first time I ever had sushi, I was in Vegas, and he introduced me to sushi. So, Adam, I love you.
Adam. Nina says, no problem with forgiveness, and I'm not saying that they should never preach again. I just think it's a case-by-case basis, depending on what you did. I agree with you, Nina. It is a case-by-case basis. Nina, I'm not coming at you. I just really wanted you to not sideline yourself. That's really what I was saying. Like, don't ever take yourself out of a position that God wants you in because you feel like you're not good enough to be there. That's all really I was addressing. Like, trust in the grace of God to put you in positions and let him be the one that if you're going to get pulled out, it'll be by him. But I'm always going to root for the second chance and the third chance and the fourth chance because I want that for my own life. I want the chances, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, y'all, if you haven't seen the documentary, go watch it. Go see it. and see what your heart feels when you're watching it.
Yeah, dude.
Sign up.
It's a good little heart check.
It's a heart check because you're going to find yourself getting angry at church. You're going to find yourself getting real angry at certain things. And it's going to call into question at the end of it whether you judge these people or whether you have grace for these people. When I was all said and done, I felt like, wow, maybe something can be too big. When you're at the top and you no longer have accountability around you because you got so big, there's never been a case in history where that person hasn't fallen. Yeah. In secular history or in Christian history, it's always gotten so big that the person couldn't hold it up. There's few men of God that have been able to escape. You got your Billy Grahams, TD Jakes is on the way to finishing his race and scandal free, whatever. Like there's very few that have like been able to do it. And I kudos to them for what they've been able to do. Kudos to anyone that can have that much access and power and not let it corrupt them. Like super kudos to them. Live loving life. I definitely felt the flood of trauma come back from my own experience. Yeah. Watch the documentary. Let us know what you think. Also, guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a part of the conversation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That was
we
fun.
Appreciate you guys. If you like this, we can keep doing this like every time we record if you guys want to join us and be a part of this conversation, because I definitely feel like it's fun hearing your guys' thoughts on this. Plus, when the chat lights up with funny stuff, I like it even more.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you guys. And like we always like to say, we pray you find. Oh, before I say this, if you're on the Instagram, come over to YouTube, subscribe so that you guys can join us on the live and on YouTube, and share it with your friends. Let them know about it. Let's have good conversation. We love you guys. Appreciate you. And like we always say, we pray you find a seat at the table. But if you don't, you are always welcome at ours. Cheers.